giving you the real from A to Z surrounding the Dallas Cowboys. News, updates, rumors, transactions, takes, and more. So strap up, Cowboys Nation, and start your day off with A to Z Sports. Live with Will Steele.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go. Friday. Good morning, good people. Welcome to A to Z Sports Live on this beautiful Friday. And of course, I am your host, Will Skywalker Steele. Boom! What's happening, people? It is Friday, and we're going to put a bow on week one of OTAs. And we're going to do it with our girl, Iisha Morrison, with Eye in the Sky with 2 eyes. It's been a few weeks since we talked to our sis. So we'll have her down here because she was down at the start on the field. She's going to give us her thoughts on what she saw at OTAs. Say OTAs. Say OTA. All right, let me stop. I'm still kind of over a lot of the songs that came out of that whole beef, but neither here nor there. Good show lined up for today. Bomb Squad. Good morning.
Bomb Squad!
Before we get into that, because we're going to jump straight into it, no roundup this morning, I want to give a quick shout out one time for the one time. Not just a shout out, but a huge thank you to our guy, Toxic Tom. Toxic Tom gifted me seat 108. Let me see. I can't write right here. Seat 108 from the old Texas Stadium, which was signed by Super Bowl champions Kevin Williams, wide receiver, and defensive back Kenny the Shark Gant. And he sent this to me. The rest of the chair is over here somewhere, but it's too heavy to pick up to show you. But this part of the chair is what was signed. And I just had to, give him a shout out here because this is a piece of history, man. A piece of history that has seen so many things, so many great things. And I just want to say I appreciate you, sir, for this to be gifted to me. Means a whole lot. Means a whole lot, man. Toxic Tom, a.k.a. Mr. Caldwell. I don't want to give out your whole name, Toxic. But thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. I know we have a lot of fun here, but that is something serious you've done for me here. And it'll forever be a part of the cave or the studio or whatever we decide to do, wherever I decide to go throughout life. So thank you, sir. It means a whole lot for me. And Kenny, speaking of which, Kenny the Shark Gant, for those who were here over the years, excuse me, I've did an interview with Kenny. I sat down with him a few times, but I did an interview with him a few years ago at a celebrity softball game. And he always leaves me with some deep words of encouragement or just words for life in general. But here's a quick little clip of me and Kenny sitting down a couple years ago at the softball game.
It's a little old cliche. Why not me? I know it's a corner bigger than me. It's one faster than me. But I had to believe what I knew. It ain't nobody tougher than me.
Right.
I don't care who. Ain't nobody tougher than me.
Ain't nobody tougher than Kenny, man. Shouts out to him. Shouts out to Toxic Tom. Our, you talk about day one. I can't remember exactly when you came aboard, Toxic, but you leave an impression. I will say that. So appreciate you, sir. You are an amazing supporter, and so is many of the Bomb Squad that come here every single day in the morning, wake up with me to give y'all this good news and good content. And today, like I said, man, we are fired up to talk to our girl, Iisha Morrison. And, she going to get mad at me, but I don't care. It's only right that we bring her in like this. Y'all ready? Let's do it. I don't care to be mad. What's up,
Oh
though?
my God.
one thing I know you're gonna do, Twin, is make a scene.
It's so funny to me because she really do not like making a scene at all. But I got to do it though. How you doing? How you doing this morning?
Morning. Good morning, man.
Good morning. Good morning. My bad. I know you got a lot going on a little later, but I am so happy that you decided to join us to give us your thoughts on what you saw down there at the Star. But first off, I just want to let you know how many fans you got here with the Bomb Squad. I don't think you realize that.
What'd you say? You
know how many fans you have here with the Bomb Squad? You are a star on this show. You're a bigger star than me on my own damn show, too. I mean, what's up with that?
Nah, man, I appreciate it. I definitely feel a lot of love when I come on your show. It's different than any other show I come on. Deserving.
No, you've put in the work, and that's why you are one of my go-tos. Whether it's stuff down on the field, in the locker room, behind the scenes, etc. You have earned that respect, and I think my fans and other Cowboy fans have seen that, and you deserve that.
Thank you, Twin.
All right, so now let's get down to brass taxes, okay? Before we start talking about some wide-ranging thoughts, I kind of wanted to hone in on a few players. Because we did a little bit of that yesterday with Pat, but we didn't dive into some individual players as much as I would have liked to. We got to, the obvious ones, Trey Lance and things like that. And we kind of briefly touched on Jaylen Tolbert. But listen, Jaylen Tolbert looks, he sounds, he feels like he's a more confident player. Brandon Cooks spoke on that. If you don't mind, I'm going to play this quick little audio clip. He said he's seeing the progression and the confidence in Tolbert himself.
What about Jaylen for you?
Yeah.
Tolbert gives you that much confidence in his ability to...
The way that he goes to work. I'm a firm believer, the harder you work and when you have a great work ethic, it's going to pay off. I think you've seen that over the last couple of years, and I think that time is now for him.
How are you seeing it pay off in this game based on what you see?
Making plays early on in OTAs, the way that he's able to talk about a route or the way he's able to tell the quarterback the way that he sees things. He's not shy anymore, you know what I mean? He's able to go up the deck and say, hey, I seen it this way, and I think it's awesome to see him grow in that aspect.
Hey, one of my favorite quotes, Twy, you look good, you play good, they pay good. And listen, he out there with the visor, the number 1. He got the sleeves going. I mean, the drip look crazy. Come on, yeah, he put on some muscles. Hey, man, look, I ain't trying to get too hype about the way his drip is looking at, and that's gonna correlate to the field. But is he looking like the confident player that he, to us based off of his drip? Is he looking like that on the field though?
Oh yeah, man. Listen, I personally. And me and Jess were talking about this offline the other day. I think Brandon Cooks, when he leaves, man, or his impact here through that receiver room is felt. But I think more than anybody, it's been felt with Jaylen Tolbert. I think that Brandon Cooks is the ultimate mentor, and he's really poured into Jaylen Tolbert as a person, even off the field, but obviously as a player. But when you talk about Jaylen Tolbert and him taking the next step, man, I think obviously the confidence and stuff that he's built and perfected his craft this offseason, I think it shows. And even during practice, with CD being gone, this gives him a rare opportunity to really be, that guy through this time and earn his keep. But you saw in practice, there's a comfort level there with him and Dak, and if you even look at last year, he had some big third down plays, y'all.
Yeah.
Like, he had some intricate plays, and if I'm not mistaken, I would have to go check his drops, Sky, but I don't know how many balls he dropped last year. Jaylen Tolbert, when the ball was thrown to him last year, he made sure he understood, hey, I'm the third read man and CD. And that's the thing is, like, when you go back and look at the film last year, he's open a lot, dude.
Yeah.
He's open.
It's just they went to CD.
No, I mean, yeah, CD, it's hard when your first read is cooking people,
right.
How CD was cooking everybody, and Dak and CD were just on such a roll, man. It's hard to even justify that. How do you justify that when y'all are in film room and you're like, the coach like, well, why did you go to your third read? And he's just like, I mean, well, CD, you know, like it's hard
what do you
to
want me to do
justify.
here?
So, yeah, but I think him taking the next step is something I expect. And honestly, you all even talk about how studious he is. I don't know if there's that many people in the locker room that probably know the playbook as good as he does. I'm excited about him. I'm excited to see what he does this year. But I do think that this opportunity that he has with CD being gone during this time will hopefully pay some dividends with him coming into the season.
Yeah, it's a huge testament, I think, to his ability to overcome the confidence issue in year one. He spoke on it in depth yesterday, or was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday or the other day, when he said, "Look, my rookie year, I pretty much lost all my confidence." And when I had spoke to him at camp that year, I could tell, and he was basically telling me, "Look, man, I'm just trying to grasp everything and take advantage of this opportunity," because I think at the time James Washington was out with an injury. Michael Gallup was trying to recover. They were asking him to play all over the field, which they're asking him to do now. And it was just so much, coming from South Alabama and trying to get down a NFL playbook and move all around. I think they put way too much on his plate. And, he has admitted, I did not take it as well. But now, getting back into, the second year with Brandon Cooks, having that veteran to help you out, learning from your past experiences, I just see the arrow pointing up for this kid. We talk about it a lot last year. Clutch third downs. He gained so much trust on fourth down. He was Dak's first read against the Eagles in an all-important division game on the road. So unless they go and sign a veteran dude, I mentioned this before, I can see Tolbert living in that 700 to 800 snap range, which is a typical wide receiver 3, and he's going to put up wide receiver 3 numbers unless some injury happens.
Listen, man. You get a wide receiver 3 that can, really threaten the defense, which I think he can, because he can play inside and outside. I think it's definitely going to help your aerial attack because, again, and this is a no knock to Michael Gallup, but there were just times where he just wasn't a factor in a game.
Yeah.
If you watch Jaylen Tolbert, some of those big plays with Dak, even so, were scramble drills. And nobody no quarterback loves a wide receiver more than one that fights to the ball for him when he's in need, and that's something that Jaylen Tolbert does as well. I agree with you. I think the arrow's pointing up for him, and I really appreciate his honesty, through this process, because I think a lot of guys would be nervous to say, man, like I wasn't confident or I was struggling with this, and the fact that he was just upfront with it. I think gives us an opportunity to empathize for the player, understand, and then also, too, that's why it makes his resurgence feel so much more meaningful, moving forward. So I'm looking forward to it. But, that wide receiver 3 spot, even though I think Jaylen Tolbert is in the best position to win it,
another Jaylen.
I'm interested. Listen, I'm interested in some of these other guys as well. Like, I'm not sure, I'm not sure that they're going to have huge impacts, but at the same time, just knowing that you do got some guys out there. Like, I was watching yesterday, and I'm looking at Jalen Cropper, and I'm just like, are y'all seeing this? I'm literally looking around at practice, like, telling people, like, do y'all see how smooth this man is en route and what he's able? He's created separation so easily out there, Sky.
I think that competition, for the young bottom of the roster wide receivers, if they go with 5 or 6 guys, because you got Turpin's going to be there too, right? So Turpin, Tolbert, Cooks, Lamb, those are your 4 guys, and then Brooks is a drafted guy. Moreno Cropper, one of their undrafted guys they love. They just drafted Flournoy. That group, right? That Flournoy, Cropper, Brooks. They
all have upside, dude.
Man, they have upside, and that competition is going to be so crazy that somebody's going to be left out. But you just hope you can possibly get them back on the practice squad. But it's good to hear, guys like Cropper taking that next step in that wide receiver room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the competition in the room is healthy, man. You don't want guys just being like, "Oh, my spot's my spot." You want the competition. And I'm definitely ready to just see how these guys perform once they get into these high intensity spots. But just getting a look at them yesterday, it was not yesterday. It was the day before yesterday at this point. My bad. But yeah, no, you just get to see how they move. And again, you can tell a lot by movement. You can tell a lot by how confident they look out there. And these young guys don't look bright-eyed. They don't look bright-eyed and, like, confused. They seem like they understand the system already, and that's good to see, you know. So, yeah, Jaylen Tolbert, going to keep our eye on JT. Y'all, listen, give don't be being fake out here, y'all.
He speaks so highly of Cooks, and shouts out to Brandon Cooks, man, from a leadership department.
Oh man, he's such an example, man.
Yeah.
He's one of the best things that I think happened to this locker room. I'm gonna be very honest with
That's
you.
so crazy, Tuai, because I was thinking about this yesterday. I'm like, I know it's only been 1 year, and I know this, statistically speaking, it wasn't some crazy year, even though he went off in the second half. We'll get to that in a second. But I think this might have been one of the better veteran trades that they've made that has had an impact on the locker room. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That this impact there obviously is being shown through a guy like Tolbert. But, he speaks so highly of him, but he's a good player his damn self, right? And he even said, like, hey, look, I'm not just a leader here. I know what I'm capable of doing. And we heard some reports yesterday that, or the other day, that him and Dak Prescott were starting to connect on that deep ball, right? And
let me talk about it. Man, listen. I was excited to just see it because, again, they're not in pads and all that good stuff, but you can take little pieces from it and you say, okay, they clearly – I'll tell you one thing about OTAs. You can tell who's been working with the quarterback in the offseason real quick. And I'm sure – they've been in the backyard. I'm sure they've been training. And, yeah, it took some time for Brandon Cooks to really get a feel in this offense and for Mike McCarthy to get him going. But, yeah, I see Dak and Brandon Cooks taking an uptick in their connection this year, which is crazy to think because last year you can correct me if I'm wrong, but he was one of our best red zone threats towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
And so I think him growing within this system is going to be good for them as well, and him establishing himself, him being established early is going to pay dividends because it's crazy to think that the Cowboys statistically and all that stuff ended up being top of the league in most offensive categories, especially through the air, and they didn't really get going until week 5, week 6?
Yeah, after the San Francisco, really after the Chargers game, for keeping it being.
It's crazy. So, yeah, no, I mean, we already know that this team, I think, whereas we're looking at them building this offensive line, and it feels like it is going to be important for them to run the ball. I don't want them to get away from the fact that they are clearly an aerial attack, and they have multiple threats there now. So, it's exciting. I'm excited. I'm like,
yes,
okay,
Staying on Brandon Cooks, I think what gets a little bit lost with Brandon Cooks is the second half of the season that he had because of how it started off. And, from week 8 on, he had 7 touchdowns. He had eight total touchdowns. I don't think you could scoff at that. And I'm just wondering, is it because of the way the season ended again in the playoffs, especially the interception that happened when Brandon Cooks I hated the route. I don't even really blame Cooks that much because the route is just stupid. I don't know why they're running a whip route with the it was like a bang 8 behind or something. I didn't like it anyway. So the interception happened. Brandon Cooks wasn't a big deal in that game, etc. But if you think about what he did in that second half, I think you actually have to be encouraged about what he could do to start the season because he's not coming into this year trying to develop a chemistry with Dak Prescott, trying to understand Mike McCarthy's playbook, which, by the way, McCarthy said something very important the other day when he said, this year we are just playing ball. We're not trying to install. We're not trying to wean out what didn't work and what did work. And I think that's going to pay dividends for the connection of Dak and Brandon Cooks.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite thing. That's my favorite thing about being an analyst is when you hear, a coach say or a head coach say something that you've been thinking. And I was, when he said that, I was like, yes, because that matters, man. Like, yes, it matters, man, when you're talking about the install process. And we looked across, you can look across the pond at the dark green and black team over there. Listen, They had a new offensive coordinator. It didn't look pretty for them. It's not always like that. The Chargers, they had an new offensive coordinator. It didn't look pretty for them. And the fact that this offense was, I think a lot of it's because you're quarterback too, but
100%.
the fact that this offense was this offense was able to come together in the way that they did from an aerial standpoint, because again, we already know what the run game was. But the fact that they were able to find success through the air the way that they were in the latter part of the season, it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes on Mike McCarthy's coaching and just the system itself. I'm excited to see him. Well, I'm ready to see the variations. I'm ready to see him build upon, some of the things that they did last year, and also too to take a step back and look at some of the things that they did and maybe say, okay, well maybe let's not do that no more, and to make adjustments and things like that. So it's interesting because we haven't gotten to see a new system that's kind of exciting in a way in a minute. Kellen Moore's system was his system for a while. We got used to it. We knew what it was. But with Mike McCarthy's system, I think there's still room. There's a lot of room, actually, for changes and some improvement in certain areas as well.
Another one of those guys in that system I think is going to thrive even more. And I'm going to use the word breakout, even though technically he did it last year, but I think there's so much more there, Iisha. And that's Jake Ferguson, man. I think Jake Ferguson is a weapon. And I don't remember saying that about our tight end since like 2010. No, and this is all due respect to Jason Witten. But, we got to a point, and 2010 might be a little bit much, but we got to a point where, Witt wasn't really a weapon, right? Schultz was a part of the offense, but really not a tone-setting weapon. Ferg is a weapon. And, he came into this is the second offseason, actually, where he came in and he's trying to hone in on, making sure his body is right and prepared to handle the workload. And you tweeted the other day, you said, quote, Ferg has talked about how he's had to really pour into his body to withstand everything being a tight end one calls for. And you said, and that baby fat is gone. He looks lean as hell.
After I tweeted that, I said, I hope he don't get me, man. But he'll be the first to tell you he likes snacks. He likes snacks. Like, don't get me wrong. And the few conversations I had with him last year, I always like to ask the guys, any regimen changes, anything you doing, any differences in like what you're putting into your body, any training changes, things like that. And he was very upfront about the fact that his rookie year, he wore down, because in this system you're being asked to block. I mean, and not saying that every tight end's not, but it's heightened in some areas, and he's being asked to block, and he's really an extension of the offensive line. But then also too, when you're catching balls, down the seam, dog, like
getting hit,
rip shot.
Yeah, you need to build that armor.
Rip shot, and I think he's taking it very seriously, and it wasn't just me. Like when he walked out onto the field, immediately a lot of people was like, "Y'all see this man? This
right?
Man, he looks lean, very lean."
Am I crazy to say we should use him in the same manner as Kelsey, as Kittle, as like use this man as if I know he's not wide receiver one because you have CD Lamb, but okay, after Lamb, use Ferg. I feel like he can be such a mismatch problem, even more so than Brandon Cooks, to any of these other receivers who I respect and believe will have good seasons. But I've seen this dude route up Fred Warner. I've seen him go across the middle of the field all year and snag everything. I've seen him knock guys off their feet in the blocking department. He's a weapon, and you haven't had this type of weapon at this position in quite some time that is reliable, that knows the playbook, that's a damn dog, and has this, connection with Dak Prescott. And if it was me, he would be the second leading targeted wide receiver by a whole lot, honestly, or pass catcher by a whole lot, honestly. But what are your expectations out of Ferg this season?
Oh no, man! Like I said, well, first of all, I think Ferg's going to do his thing regardless. I think you make a good point saying that, after CD Lamb, I would argue, and this is just me, it might be CD, Ferg, then Brandon Cooks, because attacking the middle of the field is something that Dak likes to do, and it really stresses the defense in a different way. You can hit your receivers all day on the boundary and whatever the case may be, but when you attack the middle of that field, people got to make business decisions, right?
Right.
And so for me, I think Ferg's going to do his thing regardless, but I also think, well, I know the Cowboys' success last year through the air, a lot of it was in 11 personnel. But let one of these other tight ends come on with it. Maybe a John Stevens returning from injury, maybe a Brevin Ford returning from injury. Well, he's not returning from injury,
rookie,
but the rookie undrafted. Yeah, maybe 12 personnel. We can cook in 12 personnel a little bit more.
Speaking music to my ears.
And people maybe take and again, this is no knock to Schoon, but respectfully, you turn on the film, they're in 12 personnel and they're still shading the safety to Ferg because they don't. It's not
Let him cook.
Knock to Schoon. But at the same time, they watch film. The defense watches film just like we do, and they understand this man has 5+ drops this year. I don't even know if I don't think he had that many, but it's still, they understand he's not really threatening as a receiving option. If you get another tight end in there that really threatens as a receiving option, it is going to open up your offense. And when you can cook in 12 personnel as well, then you can really start doing some things. Seriously, that's when 11 personnel, yes, like you can still stress the defense, but when you put that extra tight end out there, people got to make business decisions. People got to figure things out. It's a whole nother ball game. And to me, that's important to what Ferg's success is going to be as well, because we saw even to Sky, the people start doubling him.
Yes.
People start doubling him, Sky. You know how useful it would have been to have another tight end that was like a little scary? You might even seen even more production from him. So for me, I think they're gonna boogie regardless because he and Dak are close. And Dak loved himself a tight end. He's always found comfort in having a reliable tight end, and I think Ferg's become that, and even more that because he's a weapon, as you say. Now, if you sprinkle in another tight end, which I don't believe we have had. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if we've had a second tight end that really threatened the defense in that way in a minute. And I say that because even when Dalton Schultz was like at his peak, Ferg was still a nugget, right? So we didn't get to see, okay, let's book in 12 personnel and really punish these people.
I mean, the last time I think you had a legitimate weapon at tight end too was a guy who didn't want to be here anymore, and that was Martellus Bennett. You know, back in the early 2000s, the mid 2000s, and obviously we had Jarwin at one point, but he was always injured. He had potential to do it. Ferg, like you said, he wasn't given enough chances to really do it, but when he did, he made them count. And then we went through tight end purgatory for a year or so when they was rolling out James Hanna and those boys. So it's been a minute since you had that, and they were I guess they were maybe expecting Schoonmaker to be tight end 1. Why else would you take him in the second round? But that's never going to happen. So you hope he can settle in at tight end 2. But that kind of leads me to this question right here with him being injured. And it was a handful of these guys out right now, whether they're dealing with an injury or recovering from an injury. Which one of these injuries most concern you? Is it Luke Schoonmaker's?
I mean, as soon as I'm gonna be frank, as soon as I heard it, I said, bleep, give me a beep. Bleep. I was like, yeah.
You know, I ain't gonna pull the curtains back, but she's sitting here being all nice talking about some bleep. I've heard uncensored 2i. Ain't no in her system. So, all right, go ahead. Talking about bleep.
Listen, man, y'all know we want to cuss up sometimes, but no.
The hell is a bleep? Anyway, go ahead, Joy.
I was concerned because, listen, it is. You know how quick it is in the NFL to be labeled as hurt guy.
Yeah.
And going into another off season, going into another training camp, coming off of injury or having an injury, because I'm not mistaken, he had the what did he have last year? It was a plantar fasciitis.
Yep, he had the foot. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, it's just this time for Schoon is pivotal. It's important because he needs to still continue to build connection with Dak, and him not being on the field, if I don't know, man, it feels like a big deal. And then when you talk talk around the building and you see, even like I said, a Brevin Ford, you're just like, dude, like you don't have the room to be. There's other competition in this room now. Let's just keep it a buck. Let's just keep it at that. And it's adequate competition. And even like I said, even with John Stevens, he's coming off of the ACL. But let me tell you something. Like me and Jeff saw him in the locker room, and immediately the first thing I said was, "God dang, what you been eating? What you been eating?" Because that's the thing. You know, John Stevens is a wide receiver converted tight end.
Right.
And last year, you know, when he was even in preseason and when we started hearing whispers about him, listen, a lot of people were worried about, can he block in line? Is he strong enough to do this? And as Michael Jordan said in The Last Dance, he took that personally. Because let me tell you, he looks like a unit. And it's kind of crazy, too, because I forgot how tall he was.
Right. He's a skyscraper.
He's almost as big as Brevin Ford. Like, and so you look at him, you just like, okay, so he's put on the side. From what I know, his rehab has gone really well, and he seems about on time. Like, he seems like things is fine. Listen, man, and honestly, too, Sky, I'm not going to forget that in those preseason games, do you remember some of those screens and, like, those slip things they were having him do where he would line up, like, in line, and then they would send him in motion, and he was doing, like, they had plays designed for John Stevens last year that we didn't see for the rest of the year. Put it like that. Put it like that. So that lets you know they have a vision for the player.
You were one of the first ones to approach me about Lunda Wells, you know, having an infatuation with JSJ, John Stevens Jr.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Once he went down, it was like the air just let out the room. Like, damn, man, we really thought that he could make this team and progress. And, you know, moving forward, he could have been a part of this offense. But you keep bringing up Brevin Ford, and I was really trying to hold, like I was trying not to go overboard with Ford when I was comparing him to Schoon, because I'm like, all right, look, man, one's a second round pick, which honestly shouldn't matter. The other one obviously went undrafted. But when you watch his tape in college, I see a guy that can get some yak much better than your second round pick. A guy that I know Schoonmaker's whole thing was supposed to be blocking, but I mean, I see Ford just as good of a blocker. I see a guy that's just as big, if not bigger. He has a dog to him. I don't know. I don't know how we say, okay, this guy's second round pick, this guy's undrafted. Yes, he had a lot of drops in his last season, but there just seems to be tools with this kid that how do I'm gonna say this. I'm excited to see him compete, but I'm pretty sure if he don't make this team, somebody will be very intrigued about his talent.
Well, let me first say I have no idea why he went undrafted.
Me neither.
Let me start by saying that. Like, I had a fifth on him on my board, and I stood by it mostly because of the blocking. And there is, to me, I think there's a considerable amount of upside there with him as a passer. Respectfully, I didn't feel like Minnesota's quarterback was the best, but we're not going to go there, and that plays a role into some of the stuff that goes into a player's production. But I will say the athleticism with him, he's definitely more of an athlete than what I believe Schoonmaker is. It's just a natural athlete in the open field and some of the things he's able to do, even high pointing the ball. I'm looking at the fact that this team clearly wants it. Again, I'm not saying I want them to run the ball like crazy, but when they run the ball, it seems as though they want to have a little bit of a bite to them when they run the ball, and Brevin has that. He's a finisher as a blocker. He has a viciousness to him as a blocker. I've talked to several scouts that thought that he was one of the best blockers in this draft class. So, I mean, you're getting an extension of your offensive line as well. I mean, to your point, yes, like we still got to see him compete. We still have to see him do things. But a lot of people were high on this player, period, and I thought he was a guy that should have been drafted in the first place. So, yeah.
Let me turn the page to the other side of the ball because, you know, some of these veterans, especially in early OTAs, you're not going to hear much about them. You're going to hear about all the young guys. Even Coach McCarthy came out and said, hey, OTAs are mostly for the rookies and the second-year players. That's really what this whole thing is for, to learn and get acclimated to be a professional athlete. But, you know, the Cowboys didn't go out and sign a whole bunch of free agents, but they did bring in one who I think could play an important role, will play an important role, and that's Eric Kendricks. He got a chance to speak with the media and you guys the other day, and they asked him about his leadership for the young linebackers, and he mentioned, being vocal and talked about he understands his role. And look, I know the pads aren't on yet, but from that standpoint, does it look like he's taken that role head on? Just the little bit you did see him out there, and this one might be a bit touchy, but does it look different than it may have with, say, an LVE?
Oh no, respectfully, it looks the linebacker core is going to look totally different.
Respectfully,
I'm not trying to be, and there were several times during, again, they're just running plays, but there were several times there were 3 linebackers on the field.
What? Is that even legal? I didn't think that was legal in Dallas.
Listen, I almost fainted.
That to me shows me that we are going to be personnel matching it, and that is music to my ears.
No, yeah, there were several times where it was Kendricks, Maurice Lafau, and Damone Clark. And I do think, listen, if you guys have the opportunity to go listen to Scott McCurley, the linebacker coach, talk on the draft show, you could see and hear how deflating it was to lose DeMarvion Overshown. Let me tell you, this staff was the previous staff, and even this staff that's here now have a lot of confidence in DeMarvion Overshown. You listen to even how Mike McCarthy's talked about him and him looking ahead of schedule. Demo's one of those guys that just has that aura, and he has that work ethic, and seeing him get on the field as well is going to be exciting. The linebacker core, and I'm gonna just be honest with you, it's already faster. They're already faster. Yeah, and I'm just looking at them in T-shirts and shorts, but they're faster already, respectfully.
And you know what? I wonder if a lot of that also has to do with just understanding and knowing where to be too, right? Because sometimes, for instance, I use Sean Lee as an example all the time. Sean Lee doesn't run a 4.4, but once you put him out there on that field, because he knows where the play's going, he looked like he run a 4.1 because he's beating the ball carrier to the line of scrimmage. And we know Kendricks is a very heady player. And he talked about, teaching these young guys, but also he's learning a few different things. But there was something else that stood out to me when he spoke about Kendricks.
Oh, my bad. Wait, are you asking me?
No. I want to bring this up to just kind of just get your thoughts on this, and also even the chat as well. So one thing that stood out, right? Kendricks, he's an outsider. And we know outsiders tend to see things differently here, or sometimes get treated differently. But sometimes you hit on an outsider like a Brandon Cooks that can help inside that locker room. And they asked Kendricks, it was like, hey, man, what's different than what you expected? And he kind of flipped it a bit. He said, well, I expected this media hype. I expected, or the media, and I expected the hype. But at the same time, we got a job to do. We have to put all that to the side and go out there and do it. And it stood out to me because when you're drafted here, you kind of become, I don't want to use the word immune, but it's accepted, this whole hype thing in Dallas, right? It's nothing like Dallas, nothing like the Cowboys brand, hype, etc. But having a veteran outsider in a prominent role like middle linebacker, which holds major weight on the field, major weight in the locker room, I feel like that could have a drastic effect and maybe fading some of that, the negative part about the Cowboys aura, right? And it just came off to me like Kendrick was like, "Look, man, I'm not from Dallas. I didn't get drafted here. We putting that shit to the side. Where I don't know, maybe when you're drafted here, it's just like, yeah, man, this is just what we do, and you kind of accept it a bit."
Oh no. Listen, from my understanding of like Kendricks at this point, is the expectation from Zimmer is for him to be an extension of Zimmer.
Yeah.
And so to be in the quarterback of the defense of the second level, I think he takes that very seriously. And as far as it's funny that you say that, Sky, because on Girls Talk, Boys Talk, shout out to our girl Nicole, she asked a question at the end of our show yesterday, and she said, if you had one word to describe, what this off season should look like for, the Cowboys, what's your word? And I was struggling, and I said isolation. And I was like, I know that word typically sounds bad to people, but I think for this team, the Cowboys, I think if they want to go to the next level, if they want to really, silence a lot of the foolishness, I think isolation as a team is important. I really do. I think it's important for them to put some of the media stuff that they hear and all that stuff. Because personally, Sky, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that some of the stuff got to them towards the end of the year. I felt like some of those outside emotions and outside things affected the end result of some of the stuff we saw. And for me, I think for them to isolate as a team and to develop some effort, F them, like everybody, like us against the world type mentality is going to be healthy for them. So for Kendricks to say that and say, like, we still have a job to do, we still need to hone in on everything that, hone in on what we're doing here, I hope that that's something that echoes through the locker room and they really hold true to it, because I truly feel like that's what's necessary for this team. Maybe not other teams, but for this team, it really needs to be us against the world, because there's so many people against them. It is very easy for some of those outside emotions and stuff to creep in. So I'm actually glad that he said that. I'm glad that he said that, because I think that they need to all have that energy, right?
You're no lies told about them hearing it, because in the same interview, Kendricks mentioned how literally they hear it, right? He said, hey, man, people, I think he spoke more so about those who were here before him. But he's like, hey, yeah, man, they hear it. We hear the noise, et cetera, et cetera. Again, it's different for Kendricks. Coming from Minnesota and the Chargers, what noise? They don't even want to talk about y'all. You know what I mean? You're hardly on prime time. No one cares about the Vikings or the Chargers. So when he gets here, and he's probably listening to these young players like, yeah, man, they said this and that, or they don't, just venting, just normal stuff as you do as a human being. And he's probably like, all right, yeah, this is a little different in Dallas. These things can't mess with your psyche, but here's a way we can get around that. X, Y, Z, you got to do A, B, C. So I think it's so important to have him here. And the reason why I bring up LVE is because LVE was born in this. He was raised in it. By the time he saw light, he was blinded. You know what I mean? He talking about what?
I watched the trilogy. I watched that trilogy just because sometimes I just go watch it. So I know the references. But no, man. You're right. No, you're right. You're right. And again, like, I think to your point, I also think like bringing in a guy like Maurice, I felt like he was a temperament pick, and I think they're trying to shift some of the temperament also to you get a Cooper Beebe, you get a Maurice, like you get a Kalen Carson, like these are effort type guys. These are guys who really love football, but they play with some nasty to them, And I think even adding, I think Maurice and even Damone Clark getting the mentorship from Eric Kendricks is going to be healthy for that. I want nothing more than for us to have a veteran linebacker that is present. And again, it's not LVE's fault that he was injured, but those young linebackers have not had a concrete veteran to go to for guidance in a while. I mean, even now, I think Damone Clark still brings up Anthony Barr. Oof. And Anthony Barr was only here a year. Like, linebacker is such a detailed position. You need mentorship. You need it, and you can only get so much from your coaches. You need somebody that's done it before. And so for me, Kendricks coming in is to me, it already has the feel, like you mentioned, of a Brandon Cooks. It already has that feel that he is pouring into these young guys for them to be better, because he understands he's older. He understands that he's not going to be around forever. So he's trying to give them as much as he can. But listen, man, there's something to be said too, and we can get off of this. I'm sorry, I don't want to ramble too long.
No, you are fine.
The thing about Dan Quinn's system that I think matters, when you look at San Fran, when you look at Queen, you look at Roquan Smith, you look at Fred Warner, Greenlaw, guess what? Those guys aren't coming off the field. They're not coming off the field. And whereas I do want the multiplicity to be able to go into that big nickel and use safeties when you absolutely need to and play the matchup games, your linebackers need to be able to feel the game. You know what I'm saying, Sky? Like, they need to be able to be on the field. And because the thing is like they're trading reps with safeties. And again, it was necessary because of injury. But at the same time, when your linebackers aren't on the field enough, they're not getting the feel. It's also cutting into their timing, their rhythm, and them getting a real grasp for the game. And so for me, I also think Zim's system is going to help with the processing and help with them being able to have more time on the field. Man. So again, like that's just
don't be sorry. I want to tell people to put flames in the chat for that reason. Man. Like this is why you are who you are, and I couldn't have said it any better with that, because as you were talking about trading reps with safety, I took so many screenshots throughout the season to show to the viewers here why is number 1 at middle linebacker, why is 28 looking like he's playing strong side, why is 14 at middle linebacker, why are safeties in the middle of the defense on 12 and 13 personnel. You will never see that under Mike Zimmer. It won't happen.
No, it's not. And like I said, even just seeing how many times during practice there were 3 linebackers on the field, I said, okay, I see what time it is. Oh, here's another thing. I looked at the roster sheet thing. Guess who's listed as a safety again? Marquise Bell.
There we go.
Yes. Kick his ass out there and let him do J-Ron Curse things. And let's boogie. Let's do some of the things. I'm excited. Like, again, I'm very grateful for Marquise Bell sacrificing his body in the way that he did to take on those reps and to play linebacker in the way that he did. It's commendable. However, I know what he's able to do in coverage, and I know how strong of a tackler he is. I think he's going to be a good addition to the big nickel package when they decide to pull it out. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how much, I said this before, Zim doesn't do a whole lot of 3 safety looks. If you go look at his history, a lot of his safeties played majority of snaps, 2 of them, I should say. But, I would love for Zim to just say, look, I didn't draft you, or you. So here's what we're going to do. There's 4 talented safeties in this room. Go get it. I made the best 2 win. I understand politics is probably going to play a little bit in this because of contracts, but I would love for him to just be like, yo, go out here and compete. Wanye Thomas, I think, has the ability. Obviously, we just talked about Marquise Bell, and then you got Dono and you got Malik Hooker. But man, I am, for the first time, and even last year I could say this, but for the first time in a long time, back-to-back years, I feel comfortable with the safety depth, and I couldn't say that for like 15 years for the Cowboys.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so you got Wanye, and then you also, too, I mentioned him before, and I think I'm going to continue to keep an eye on him. You got Julius Wood as well, who is a
ECU kid?
He's a monster in the run game. A monster. Playing him close to the line of scrimmage is a plus. I think we'll get the opportunity to see him a little bit in preseason and stuff like that, but just knowing, like, I think if in some instances like Adano is out or anything like that, I do think that you're getting, if he's the backup, I'm not super scared of that. But also Julius Wood, he's a tone setter. He's a tone setter.
Yeah.
And me and Nick Harris were talking about it on the sideline. A lot of the undrafted free agents they brought in are run stoppers. The linebackers, they're all run. Yes, they are all run stoppers. And so even a Julius Wood, we'll get to see a little bit of him as well. No, I agree with you. I think the safety room is pretty much laced up, and you have some versatility in it. And I'm definitely excited to see. And again, and I'll be honest with you, I touched base with some of the secondary players. They're excited, man. They are excited about Zimmer and this new system and some of the things that they're doing, because, like, let's keep it a buck, Sky. It was we run a man all game, we run a cover 1, cover 3, and we might split safeties, but even when you split safeties, why the hell would you have J-Ron Curse out there?
Oh man, getting cooked.
Don't get me started.
Man, you had J-Ron Curse rotating to center field, and I'm just like, what are we doing, man?
it was weird sometimes. But I say that to say that, I touching base with some of the secondary players. They're excited as well about some of the different things they're going to be doing. And I think there's some confidence there, and they should be.
Yeah, that's Zim's baby, right? Defensive back. I think he gets the, we talk about the linebackers and the double A gap blitzing and things like that. But if you really dig deep into Mike Zimmer and go look at his history with defensive backs and particularly safeties, he has a lot of success at every single stop. Cowboys, Cincinnati, and Minnesota with safeties getting Pro Bowls and All Pros and Hall of Famers, out of those stops, or at least a few of them. And by the way, y'all, Iisha Morrison, DallasCowboys.com. If you're just listening and you're not watching, that's who we got joining us and giving us this fantastic content and analysis. Speaking of safety, I think a shrewd organization, Iisha, would look at, okay, where is my deepest part of my team, right? Where do I have an abundance of guys? And then where am I lacking? And can I take where I have an abundance, flip it, and get somebody that'll help out a room? And the two positions I think safety is really deep. And then I look at defensive tackle. And, I love Osa. But Osa dealing with a hip thing, he hurt. But even if he wasn't, it does not matter because he's just one guy. You look at Mazi Smith, right, who is still, trying to climb back up to get his weight. We're told 305. You can see the pictures out there. He looks small. You can maybe, dive in a little bit on his stature as well. And then you look behind that, you got two rookies, Justin Rogers and Daxton. Who, Rogers is a big guy. Daxton played with one of the better guys, Newton, at Illinois, Syracuse. I always get those two mixed up. But it's not a deep room. So I just wonder, if they're not going to go out and sign somebody, maybe they flip somebody. But regardless, that defensive tackle room, Iisha, not even is it? It's definitely a cause for concern. But just how concerned are you?
Oh, I've been concerned. Listen, I've been concerned for a long time now. Yeah. I've been concerned since the season ended. I was screaming it to the mountaintops on the draft show. I felt very strongly about it because the middle of your defense, don't get me wrong, sometimes your edges wasn't rush containing and they were undisciplined, but the middle of your defense is what got your ass whooping. That's what let's just keep it what it is. It was a huge part, but also too, just talking back to Zim's system, he always has big guys in the middle, and they may not be super flashy, fancy, but they serve a purpose and they know the job that they have to do. And for me, I think they have to. In my heart, I believe they will at least grab one veteran D tackle. They have to. It's not an option. It's not an option anymore because the depth there, it's not proven. It's not and again, we're not going to sit up here and just talk about Daxton and Rogers and not give them a chance because I think Justin Rogers specifically can, be a good rotational piece.
But it's not fair to those young guys to be asked to take the lion's share of stopping the run.
No, I don't think it's fair, and I'll take it a step further. I don't think it's fair to even expect Carl Davis to do that. I think, and don't get me wrong, I do think in the little bit that I've touched base with Carl, I do think that he is a little bit more comfortable in Zim's system than maybe Dan Quinn's. I think he is a little bit more comfortable, but even just the expectation from the things that we saw from him on film last year, that's my dog, but it wasn't pretty. And so you're literally sitting here like, who is the DT? And also too, I want to add, I was under the impression that Zim was going to look at Chauncey Golston and be like, well, just kick your ass on out the edge where you belong. But he took reps on the edge and he took reps at DT. And so that might be a thing. That might be a thing, continue to be a thing as well. I think you absolutely have to. I mean, honestly, they might get fancy and go grab two, however they can, because you got post-June cuts. And then obviously during training camp, it's that weird time where, people get signed or whatever. You absolutely have to invest in at least one other veteran D tackle to come in here because that room's so thin right now. And it's not thin because of a lack of bodies. It is thin because of a lack of experience and
quality
being
bodies,
proven.
right? I mean, no offense to these guys, but Carl Davis is a journeyman. Let's just be honest.
No,
He's a journeyman.
it's
You
not.
have a 7th round pick, undrafted guy. You can't really just sit here and say it with your chest with those guys just yet. You got Osa, who, I said this before with Osa, and I guess now with Chauncey. I didn't expect Chauncey to be defensive tackle, but these guys are traditionally extremely undersized defensive tackles in Mike Zimmer's scheme. Traditionally, he doesn't roll out 269 and 280 pound defensive tackles. But I wonder if he's like, I don't got a goddamn choice. Y'all, we don't have players at the position, so I got to keep Chauncey ghosting at defensive tackle, which I don't think helps this team. I think he's much better as a defensive end in the Zimmer scheme, but they're not going out and getting Zimmer, which I'm a little bit shocked, because historically speaking, when they've had a new defensive coordinator, they've let them go out and get a bunch of players early on, and they're not doing that with Zim.
No, I was disappointed. I was honestly. Now, when you look at the draft and everything, because I was sitting over there to the side, and I was just looking at the depth at all the different positions, and I was like, God, look, Sky. God dang it, they done did it again. Dang it, they done drafted okay. They done drafted pretty good, and the roster looked decent. So honestly, I'm not upset at where the roster looks right now. But the DT position is the only thing that I say they absolutely should have, to me, attacked in free agency. I'm sorry. Listen, with Mazi, and I don't, I'm very gentle and considerate when I talk about Mazi. The football person in me, I can't rely on him right now. As much as I believe that he has the capability of getting back and being okay, I can't bet on that right now because I haven't seen it.
You kind of got to move as if he doesn't exist, right? The shoulder surgery, the weight loss, the mental health. It's a lot. It's a lot to ask to be confident in him right now.
It's heavy, and so for me, I'm like, you guys should have handled that as though he was not a factor in the conversation. I'm sorry, and that's just how I feel about it. And even though I thought Hankins' first year was better than his second year, I still feel like the loss of him means something.
Oh, he would have been so good in this game.
Yeah, you didn't address that, and so to me, it's a necessity. They can't mess around. And when you ask what position group is. I honestly, looking at the offensive line yesterday, I was like, okay, you have your starters and you have adequate backups. Even if Brock Hoffman ends up being your backup, you're confident in that. Like, you're confident enough in that. Even if TJ Bass ends up being your swing guard, you're confident in that. And I want to say, I think if you work on, I hate to say, Jesus.
Uh-oh.
I hate to say this. I hate to say this, but I do think. Even we touched base with Austin Richards. I touched base with him. He's huge, y'all. Like he's definitely put on some a lot more peanut size. Butter. Oh my God! I say your neck all thick and stuff.
So
I said, dang man, what you been doing?
What it sound like to me? Is this your most confident position group?
I can't. I'm gonna say it's my most confident, but. You can't be mad at what it looks like right now. Again, we still have to see. I think this is a formality just because they had Chumi Doga out there taking the left tackle snaps. Of course, they're going. Brock Hoffman was taking the center snaps. Of course, I think those competitions will take place in training camp, and we'll see who wins or whatever the case may be. But to me, I think you can expect Tyler Guyton to be your left tackle. I just think. I do think that the depth there is better than what I thought, and I think a lot of that has to do with what we saw from Hoffman and TJ Bass last year. But even as your swing tackle, whoever that may be, if it's Austin Richards, I think we're going to see. Me personally, I think we'll see a lot of Austin Richards in preseason, which brings me to my second point. If you did, and I'm not saying it's right. But if you did feel comfortable in Chumi Doga being your swing tackle and relying on that.
Oh my God, bro. Oh hell no.
Listen. I don't feel no better than. But clearly they like the dude.
I know.
So if you felt comfortable in that, then maybe you ransom one of these offensive linemen for.
Real quick, before you move off of Awesome Richards, was he at left tackle or was he at guard?
Awesome, he's at left tackle.
Yes. I hope he focuses at tackle. I don't like him moving inside.
He does most of his work at left tackle,
okay.
But I want to see a step from him. But what I was saying is, and I don't like it either, but if you are in a position to where you absolutely positively, because in training camp things happen, preseason things happen, you absolutely have to, if he shows himself strong during training camp and preseason, I think you could ransom ransom him for a DT or something. I hate to say it.
No,
it.
I feel what you're going, and that's why I use safety, because offensive line I feel like is too important, right? Like if you got the depth at O line, not many teams are getting rid of the depth before the season.
Heck no.
Right now, in the season, if you a bad team, then we'll ship off a guy because we're a bad team, but preseason, especially for the Cowboys, who, if you listen to McCarthy, talks about, I've never had the privilege of having the same starting five all year. And that correlates to winning. So, like you said, if Brock Hoffman and TJ Bass are my backups, and then, Chumi Doga he slides inside, I can live with it. Awesome Richards takes the next step. Yeah, I feel okay about my depth. I feel decent. I'm not going to, cry about my depth. But if I get rid of a TJ Bass or an Awesome Richards, or I guess you can say Chuma, whatever. Well, now my depth takes a hit, and
there's also the left tackle out of Louisiana, Nathan.
Oh yeah, Nathan Thomas, my guy. Yeah. You're right. I didn't even. And I like him a lot.
Hear me out.
Come on now.
Yeah, exactly. So hear me out. That's what I'm saying. Like,
okay.
Do you draft? And I don't think this is a knock to Awesome. I think it's more competition, but. To your point, yes, I liked Nathan Thomas tape as well. So
Loved
it's like, and not only the thing about Nathan Thomas, he has a lot of experience, and he didn't have a lot of penalties. He had very minimal penalties at left tackle, which says something about the player. And he's heavy in the run game as well. I'm just saying, like, I think the offensive line depth is probably some of the best we've had going into an off season in a while. I'll say that. I'll say that.
You know what is interesting about it is I think it's very heavy in young potential. I think more than it's been in the past, right? When you talk about Brock, who's young, TJ's young, Nate Thomas is obviously a rookie, and I'm just speaking strictly on depth. Awesome Richards, your 5th round pick. These are depth guys who I think have looked better than, and you could say whether they're injured or whatever. And I'm not speaking to Nate Thomas here, but I think guys like TJ and Brock and Awesome, I can say push out a Ball and a Willetsko. Those guys to me didn't give me any confidence, early on. It's vice versa for these other dudes. So it is
it's put up or shut up for them.
Yeah.
It's put up or shut up. I fully believe, it's put up or shut up for them. Because quite honestly, you can't justify it. Like, you can't. To me, what's the justification for
Nothing.
Them taking up a roster spot in any way, shape, or form if they're not going to contribute for a 3rd year, 4th year at this point? And that's just me being frank. I will also say Terrence Steele.
Cuzzo.
Terrence Steele. I look to him to return to form this year. I think you did start seeing him come along towards the end of the season, and even in the Green Bay game, I just felt like he looked like he was getting his legs under him.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm
Don't get me started on Cuzzo, because I'm in my defense mode on Terrence Steele right now, man. And I know we joke a lot about it on here because he's my cousin now. He was my 2nd and 3rd cousin, like, for most of the season, the way he was playing. But for those who are new here, he's not really my cousin. It's a joke. But I went and we actually broke this whole thing down live on the channel. I said, let's go watch him in the San Fran game. Let's go watch him in the Philly game, and then go look at the Green Bay. He looks night and day, and that's why I have so much confidence in him returning to form. I think he gets a bad rep when he's healthy as a pass protector. I think he's a solid pass protector. Is he an elite pass protector? No, but I've heard people say he's not good. I think he's definitely a solid, decent, trusted pass protector when he's healthy. Is he tiring? No. But when he's healthy, he's also a dominant run blocker. So if I got a dominant run blocker, a solid pass protector, I've got me a really fine right tackle. Now, Terrence got to go out there and show it, or I'm going to look like an idiot. But I feel confident in a healthy Terrence getting back to form.
I agree. I say all that to say that I'm excited for this offensive line. I think, it may not, and again, like even with Tyler Guyton, it may not be super pretty all the time and all that stuff, but I'm ready for the competition. The competition at center. I'm ready for, to see who, because I really believe that whoever is on the field, I pray that, that things